Hello, everybody. It is so nice to see everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hello, I am Wendy Singer, Director of Education at the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center. On behalf of our CEO, Susan Abrams, and the Board of Directors, I would like to welcome you to our first ever live virtual program. Tonight, you are part of history. The mission of the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center is expressed in our founding principle: remember the past, transform the future. One of the ways the museum fulfills this mission is through programs and initiatives that foster the promotion of human rights and the elimination of genocide. April is Genocide Awareness Month, and tonight you will meet a true upstander, Henry Cervantes, and learn about the meaningful work he does to make the world a better place. Henry will give a short presentation and share his documentary video. Afterwards, there will be a live Q&A where we will be taking questions through our chat feature. If you are new to Zoom, hover your mouse to the toolbar on the bottom of your screen. Please click on the chat icon and send questions to me, IHMEC Wendy Singer, privately. I will be sharing questions with Henry when the time is right, and we will get to as many questions as possible, but please understand if we don't get to all of them. Henry serves as Program Manager for the Peace Exchange Chicago, where he leads the Peace Builder Leadership Development Program that engages youth from Chicago's West Side and South Side communities in training and international travel to study nonviolent social movements. Cervantes also leads its Speaking Peace, a peace education curriculum that has engaged thousands of middle school students. Additionally, Cervantes leads weekly sessions at the Cook County Jail, where he trains incarcerated young men in nonviolence as part of the sheriff's anti-violence effort, SAVE program, and has taught at North Park Theological Seminary at Maximum Security Stateville Correctional Center. Cervantes is one of 40 human rights champions featured in the permanent exhibition Take a Stand Center at Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center. Thank you so much for being here, Henry. Welcome.
Thank you, Wendy, for that kind introduction. Thank you, Wendy, for that kind introduction. Hello and good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to join the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center as we commemorate Genocide Prevention and Awareness Month. I want to thank everyone for joining us virtually tonight in exploring this important conversation of the issues of genocide, and most importantly, what we can do to create more consciousness and learn of ways we can prevent it. I work for the Peace Exchange, which is a program of Holy Family Ministries. And for the past year, we have been learning about genocide from people who have been impacted by this issue. I want to take a moment to thank our board of directors, our staff, our donors, and our supporters. The presentation that you're going to see tonight is in thanks to their continued and generous support. Tonight's program features Amahuru, the peace exchange in Rwanda. It is the story of our youth peace builders and what they learned from the survivors and perpetrators of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi people. Before we share our documentary film with you, I would like to share some slides to give you some context of our journey. Great. So again, our mission is to train and travel and do outreach with our peace builders so that they can become leaders, role models, and peacemakers in their own communities. The Peace Exchange, we work with peace builders who are committed with peace to peace and nonviolence. Our peace builders build relationships, retrieve training, and travel internationally, and then have the opportunity to come back to Chicago neighborhoods to share their stories with young people. Our program works in 3 phases. Our first phase is training. Our peace builders receive 80 hours in leadership training to study the root causes of violence. We've studied different issues ranging from domestic violence to gang violence to studying the Holocaust and genocides. Trying to move to our next slide here. Phase 2 is international travel. Each year, our peace builders travel to an international destination to meet with other peace leaders and activists in their home countries to learn about how they've overcome large issues of systematic violence. Our peace builders have traveled to countries like Myanmar, Thailand, Nicaragua, South Africa, India, and most recently, last summer, we were in Rwanda to study the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi people. And then phase 3, our peace builders share their stories with young people in their own communities. The film that we're going to show tonight is called Amahuru, the Peace Exchange in Rwanda. And I want to give a special shout out to Free Spirit Media Pro, which is a nonprofit organization that produces our documentary films. On the slide that you see here, the young people in the blue shirts are our young peace builders. Each of these young peace builders have been nominated and sponsored by one of our partner organizations. And this film documents their journey in Rwanda. The gentleman in the middle of the photograph here is a gentleman by the name of Carl Wilkins, who was our teacher, our leader, our guide when we were in Rwanda. And he allowed us to hear his story as well as introduced us to people in Rwanda who survived the genocide. To us, Carl Wilkins is a hero, a peacemaker, and a great role model. So we were very lucky to be able to be with him and the people of Rwanda. Amahuru in the Kenya-Rwanda language means peace. And this is the film of our story in Rwanda, learning about the genocide, but also what we can do to prevent further genocides from occurring. So without further ado, I'd like to present our film. Amahuru, the Peace and Change in Rwanda.
A lot of people, when they hear Rwanda, they hear genocide. But that's something that happened and is no longer happening.
Decades of tension between Hutu and Tutsi, fueled by hate-filled propaganda, erupted in April 1994. Organized and led by the extremist Hutu-controlled government, well-armed gangs began systematically killing Tutsi and moderate Hutu men, women, and children. 1 million people were killed in 100 days. Neighbors slaughtered neighbors. Friends murdered friends. The genocide ended on July 4th, 1994, when forces from the Rwanda Patriotic Front liberated the capital city of Kigali. 25 years later, the people of Rwanda continue to heal and reconcile. Mass graves at genocide memorials, some containing the remains of thousands of victims, provide a stark reminder of this terrible period. You hear about what happened and you hear facts and statistics. It doesn't really hit you until you're really there and you see the names of people and the ages and how they were killed, and it really gets to you.
I think the people of Rwanda have opened up a window for us to really understand what does it mean for a people to fully embrace their history, not ignore it, not say it didn't happen, but to learn from it. For young people in the United States right now, it's a historical moment for us. I think we live in a world where we see a lot of violence. And I think what's important for us is to figure out how can we come back, how can we rebuild, how can we empower and take charge of our own communities.
harimo ubujiji. Ubujiji ni indwara ikomeye cyane. Kandi u Rwanda kubera ikandamiza n'ubutegetsi bubi ntabwo abantu bari barize. Abantu benshi ntabwo bari barize. Noneho kubwira umuturage ko niyica ibintu byose by'umututsi biri bube ibye, burya inda ni ikintu kibi cyane. Iyo ufite inda nini ikakurenga igukoresha ibintu bibi, bubonera ahantu bushobora gufatira abantu mu kintu. Imyaka myinshi baracyumvise ko umututsi ari mubi, urumva harimo yanda ako akaza n'ubujiji, aho ubwira umuntu kwica mugenzi we akumva ko ari ibintu by'ibikinisho ko nta kibazo, kubera ko udatekereza ese uwe nase umuntu nkanjye.
Where are you suffering from? From Tutsi. That's in the newspaper as well.
A genocide is preventable. Violence is preventable. And this is the right time that people should think of a world free of violence and discriminations. And I've listened to the people that regret having participated in the genocide. I've listened to the people who survived the genocide. I did as well. And then I get to somehow understand the person, like how the person has gone from being a human being with values of, that he's supposed to be or she's supposed to be having, and turn into a killer. But I've listened to the people as well who have gone from being that killer and restore the spirit of humanity and come back to normal. So it's a practice that is daily, that has challenges that are very enormous, but I do it with an open heart.
I think for our peace builders, we're going to have a different understanding of what it means to be trauma informed. What does it mean to reconcile, knowing that awful things have happened? This idea of forgiveness. I've never thought about forgiveness the way I think about it now, being here in Rwanda. I think the people that live on these hills have been through a lot, and I don't know how on earth can people walk and still be able to look at each other as fellow human beings. That idea is completely alien to me. But another thing too that I've learned from the people of Rwanda is that forgiveness is not a destination. It's not something that you do or just arrive at. It's a process, and it's something that you work on every day. And I think for us in Chicago, we have a lot to learn about what it means to forgive, what it means to reconcile.
It's a big journey. It's a big journey for people to forgive. There are some people who can't understand why they did that, who lost almost every member of their families, who still have that pain on their heart. So it's not easy for them to forgive. But when you come to a time to realize that forgiving will give yourself to be at ease, at peace, you just forgive.
The first step to forgive is to accept what has happened. What's done is done, and then you have to work on yourself to how to go through it in a positive way.
Living life the best way you can and just appreciating life for what it is. Forgiveness plays a role in that because once you forgive somebody, you're like basically starting your route to healing yourself. And once you heal, then you can appreciate life a lot more and not walk around with hatred in your heart for somebody else. You can appreciate life and love others.
I was a very depressed woman with no hope, not wanting to live, but after I forgive, I felt like, I want to live again.
On the afternoon of our fourth day in Rwanda, we visited Gweru, one of 6 reconciliation villages where genocide survivors and perpetrators live alongside one another. It was there that we met Maria, a 61-year-old survivor, and Filbert, a 44-year-old man who as a 19-year-old killed Maria's husband and 3 of her children.
At the reconciliation village, I had a lot of conflicting feelings. Like, I didn't know whether to feel angry and like mad, but then I didn't know whether to feel like at peace with myself and like at peace with them. But at the same time, I wanted to feel like, okay, let me just be here in the moment and really understand their testimonies from both the victim and the perpetrator. Sometimes it's best to just be there and just to hear.
When we asked this lady, Maria, why would you invite the guy who killed your husband and kids to your wedding? Why would you not just invite him? Why would you make him the MC? I'm thinking your family, you're just upsetting the family by doing that. And she says, it's my home.
I couldn't believe that they could be so close again after having such different paths in life and that take them very different ways, being a survivor of a genocide versus being a perpetrator of a genocide. I don't know if I would be strong enough to forgive something like that, but I was really inspired by the courage of Maria, the strength that she has as a person to forgive someone like that and to allow forgiveness so that their community can grow.
We can introduce them to people. We can introduce them to stories, people of courage, people who don't give up, people who really buck the norm because they believe it's the right thing to do. Introducing them to people like that and to stories like that, that's valuable. And then hopefully they'll understand how powerful their story is.
One of the peace champions grew up without a father, and I grew up kind of without a mother. And it was like, okay, I was thinking that when I came here and when I met them that we'll have totally different experiences and we'll be going through totally different things. And so it was like, it took a lump out of my chest to find someone who connected with me. Carl told me recently that forgiveness means no longer looking down on that situation or the person. And it kind of really stuck with me based off of my personal experiences with my mother. I spent countless years disliking her, countless years blaming myself for the reason of her not being in my life. And so when I heard that forgiveness is not linear, and when I heard that forgiveness means you're healing and you're no longer looking down on that person, it was touching for me because it was the idea that once I can forgive her, I can move on. Once I can forgive her, then I can feel better about myself.
Maria took 10 years to forgive Filbert, and I think a lot of it is just time, and she saw effort that Filbert put in, to just say hi to her. Even if Maria wouldn't say hi back, he would go out of his way to say hi to her. And I think for me to forgive someone, I would need to see effort be put in by the perpetrators to want forgiveness.
The one thing that's going to stick with me going back to East Garfield Park is the conversation I had with the peace champion. He told me about his father and how he didn't want to let his father's actions determine his future.
Kids who are born after genocide, having to deal with our past, our history, most of them carry a trauma that they inherited from their parents. So it's a big challenge having to deal with something you didn't cause yourself, and even finding yourself being traumatized to things you didn't even see, because it does not make sense.
Back at home in Chicago, like all the trauma that we go through, kids and teenagers, we become like desensitized to it, which is not good. It really makes you think about some of the choices that you make. Am I doing enough? Am I doing the right things?
Los jóvenes tienen un voz y creo que cuando los jóvenes tienen un voz, entonces sí se puede hacer un cambio. Y creo que aquí en Rwanda sí hubo muchos cambios.
It's really important to educate youngsters on their past and their history so they can learn from it, especially because I think a big theme of afterwards, never again, we can't let this happen again.
Young kids, young people are the hope of a country that is destroyed like Rwanda was. It's up to us to choose what to do and to choose better so that history will not repeat itself.
When we were at the Gashora all-girls school, the girl next to me, Joanna, she said something that really resonated with me. I'm going to live my truth. She's not going to live by anyone else's truth. She's not going to do something out of convenience. She's not going to live by something that she doesn't believe in so that she can fit in. She's going to do what she believes is right.
Never forget that every one of us has something to offer. It may, in your estimate, look little, but you don't know the value it is bringing to the community around you. It's in those tiny little things that we build over time that make peace.
Step back. Come on. Don't be embarrassing us like that.
Dance and art in general is a way to express yourself.
Dancing means everything to me. Dancing is how I found my self-confidence. Dancing is how I'm going into the woman I am today. I mean, before I started dancing, I didn't really know who I was. I was just here, but who is Micah? I didn't really know.
I think it was a very interesting way to see these people that don't speak the same language. Sometimes I would leave my auntie with them. They could communicate. I don't know how, but they did. And I'm glad that you can see that when there's intentionality in whatever you're doing, that love goes beyond boundaries of language, of culture, and that people can actually understand each other even when they don't understand each other.
I really love the homestay. I call her Mama Benny. She treated me like I was her own child.
No one at home wanted them to go. My auntie would be like, tell them I don't want them to go. I want them to stay forever. And she told me 3 times. And I was like, I'm not gonna repeat the same word so many times. I think they actually heard what you said. My dad was calling them his daughters. Guess now my dad has more kids and the love is being divided into so many pieces. I don't know where we are.
One thing I know about peace is motivated by love. If you have love, it means peace is around you. Let's show our community, let's show them that we have a love to share.
In the past years, commemoration period used to be a very traumatic experience. I'm not saying that it's no longer, but we are on 25 years after. When we look back, we don't go back to cry and, we look back and thank God. We look back and feel proud of where we are today. We look back and regardless of what has happened, peace is possible. People can live again. we actually have a saying now, twarirokoke, which means we've survived. Not just survived death, but we've also survived life. We have a good life now. So we are proud of where we are today, and we are very hopeful to see what the future holds for us.
Violence can never be resolved by another violence. And somewhere, somehow, there's one person that needs to stand against that cycle, and that person becomes the pioneer of a new future. Chicago peace builders, go and be the voice. Tell them what you have seen. Peace can be possible. It starts with one person, and then another one, and then another one, and then a family, and then a country, then everyone.
Thank you so much, Henry. That was a wonderful, wonderful documentary. And before we get to the rest of our slides, there is someone special on our call that I wanted to spotlight for a moment. It is our very own superhero, Carl Wilkins. Carl, thank you for joining us.
Hey, I was so happy to hear this. Henry, I can't tell you how good it is to lay eyes on you. And then to see the students, oh man. And it takes us right back as they're talking about the conflicting emotions, the beauty, and then the confusion, and how can these people, I'm so happy to be with you this evening. So proud of the work, not only from our time in Rwanda, but that the kids are doing now in the schools. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Carl. We know you have such a busy schedule, and it's just an honor to see you.
Well, I'm looking forward to chatting some more with Henry and the group. Thanks you, Wendy, for the invitation and for hosting this.
Awesome. Look forward to meeting you in person sometime soon.
Thanks.
Awesome. All right. So we are going to move over to complete our slide presentation. One moment. All right, Henry, it's getting stuck in this view, so I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna unfortunately not see the pretty version here, but go ahead and make your comments.
Sure, thank you, Wendy. I just wanted to thank again Carl Wilkins for joining us tonight. So, and the slide that you see here on your screen, this is our peace builders at the Kigali Genocide Memorial. One of our partners in Rwanda was Aegis Trust, who really kind of showed us the memorial sites. They introduced us to survivors. Here you see some photographs of our peace builders showing their respects to the victims of genocide. At the Kigali Genocide Memorial, there are thousands and thousands of people who are buried here as out of respect to the victims of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi people. We go on to our next slide. We see a photograph of Maria and Filbert. I don't know if in the film there was the powerful story that stuck with us of this reconciliation village. We had the chance to visit Guero, which is an amazing and incredible community, and shows what people can do in the aftermath of such violence and genocide. We had a chance to meet Maria, who was a survivor. Her children and husband were killed. And you saw in the film that she has made peace with Filbert, who was the perpetrator who committed acts of genocide against her family and her community. Visiting Guero and being with the people of Rwanda, in this particular community where you have victims and you have the perpetrators, figuring out a way 25 years later to build peace is a powerful testimony to what we can do if we want to create more awareness and if we want to prevent further genocides from happening. And so, and in the last photograph here in the slide, you see all of us together with Carl Wilkins, with Maria, with Filbert, really posing together for a photograph here to capture that moment and to show us that peace is possible, that forms of genocide, that genocide is a systematic way of killing people, but there's other ways people can do to resist such forms of violence. And we know that it is the power of community, it is the power of understanding history and giving people a voice. So those are the slides that we have for you today. Wendy, if there's any questions from the community, I think I would totally be willing to answer them.
Wonderful. All right. Okay. So my first question for you, Carl, is can you tell us more about the Reconciliation Center in the video? And more about Maria's story.
Sure. So Maria's husband and children were killed by Filbert. Maria forgave Filbert, but she didn't forgive him right away after the genocide. After the genocide took place, many genocidaires, people who committed acts of genocide, fled the country. Of the people that were captured, they were apprehended and served prison time. Filbert, the young man you saw in the film, he went to prison. He served time and he was incarcerated. But after he was released from prison, the people of Rwanda have a system in which they have sought justice their own way. And that is known as the Gacaca tradition, where people sit together as a village and they figure out, how are we going to bring this person back into our community? How is Filbert going to come back into our village? So that was really through the power of Gacaca, which literally means to sit down and talk. So it took Maria 10 years to forgive Filbert. It wasn't overnight. But also, Maria is just one story. Not everyone in Rwanda has forgiven. But it's that one story that can teach us that people can live again, that people can reconcile again. That village is one of a couple of villages in Rwanda that is working to foster those relationships between perpetrators and survivors of the genocide. 25 years later, Rwanda is a different place. And people still remember because it's not a long time ago. And so there's many initiatives that take place in the country that can teach us about reconciliation. And we thought that that particular story in Guero with Filbert and Maria really kind of teaches us that we can reconcile differences, maybe not as something as large as that, but she can teach us.
Thank you, Henry.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that the peace builders traveled to Rwanda during the 25th anniversary in commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsis. What are two main takeaways that you can share with our audience today that you experience and your group experienced?
One takeaway is that genocide is preventable. Just like Filbert mentioned in that film, that genocides are preventable. But in order for us to prevent further genocides, we have to understand the history. It was the young people in those communities that did the killing. It was the young men. They were 14, 15, 16-year-olds. How do we undo that? We have to educate. We have to create awareness of history. And part of that is really digesting difficult history, history of colonialism, history of racism. And so that's something that's a big takeaway for us. The genocide in 1994 against the Tutsi, that wasn't the only genocide that occurred in Rwanda. There was many other genocides before that led up to that conflict. So if we want to prevent further tragedies like that, we have to understand the history of colonialism, the history of racism. And the second takeaway for me personally is that peace is possible. But in order for that to be possible, people have to have the courage to entertain just the idea that you can forgive somebody. And that is a gift. And to a certain extent, you need to learn how to do that. As a kid, I wasn't taught how to forgive anything. But I think that if we listen to these stories, we can discover our own power, because forgiveness, there's a source of power there, and it can be a shining example. So those are the two takeaways for me.
Thank you, Henry. Do you consider Rwanda to be free from violence today?
I think Rwanda can teach us how to move a country forward. I think that there's an organization that we worked with there called Mind Leaps, and they're working with refugees today. They're trying their best to prevent violence from occurring. What I can say is that from what we saw visiting the villages and visiting the memorials, is that it's a work in progress. And there's many things that we can learn from Rwanda as a country. One of the things that we discovered when we were there is women are involved in government in great numbers. There is an initiative where everyone in the country cleans up once a month. Everybody does their fair share in cleaning the country. Rwanda, arguably, is one of the safest countries you can travel to in Africa. And so that can teach us something right there. You know, arguably it's one of the safest countries in the entire continent. So I think, you know, what are the things that are working? I think what's happening at the local level can teach us a lot. People like Maria can teach us a lot.
Thank you. Thank you so much. How did you get involved in this work? Tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today and with the organization and yourself.
Sure. I became involved with the Peace Exchange. I was a peace builder when the project was founded 8-9 years ago. So I was, when I was younger, I was a peace builder. And so that's how I got involved with this particular work. In our original, in that inaugural year, we had a chance to travel to Thailand and learn the methods of peace. And ever since then, you know, trying to do my part to help other people understand strategies and tactics to make peace in our world. So that's how I got involved. You know, I live in Chicago. I live in the little village community in Chicago's Lower West Side. We have our own issues of violence, right? But there's a lot of things that we can learn from other poor people. Poor people can teach us a lot of what it means to struggle. poor people can teach us a lot about what it means to create change. The only people who can create change in this society are the people that are affected by those issues. So that's something that I've learned in my journey as a peace builder and now as a program manager for the Peace Exchange.
I just wanted to make a quick comment if people are not following the chat. Somebody asked if the video was available online, and it is available. You can Google the video and find it. It is also on
it's on our
Peace
website.
Exchange website, yes. So
yes.
Definitely.
Yeah, if you go to www.peacex.org, you can find not only our documentary to Rwanda, but the documentaries of our travels to other parts of the world. And Chad also posted a link to the video.
Great. Henry, tell us how the peace builders, the teens, their lives were impacted by this trip, and what are they doing now?
One of the things that we're very intentional about is we try to recruit young people that live in the community, in the south sides of Chicago, in the west sides of Chicago, communities that have that are struggling, that have high rates of violence. So we work with our partner organizations to identify young people who are interested in social justice, peacemaking, and nonviolence. Most of the young people that have this opportunity have never been on a plane before. The majority of our young people have never left the country before. And so it has a powerful transformative experience for them. Out of all of our alumni that have been through our program, every one of our peace builders has moved on and has either studied or is engaged in a professional career in helping their immediate communities. So we know that we can't take credit, right? But it does have an influence in young people if you just give them that opportunity to go out and learn, and give them the opportunity to come back to Chicago and share their stories with young people in their own neighborhoods. A lot of great things can happen if you give young people a voice, and that's something that we're trying to do.
Amazing, amazing. Another question that came up is, how could they arrive and be able to forgive and move on? Is that forgiveness for real, or still under feelings that it could show up again?
I'm sorry, Wendy, can you repeat the question?
Sure. The question is, from one of our viewers, how could they arrive to be able to forgive and move on? Is that forgiveness for real, or still under feelings that it could show up again?
Sure, that's a great question. And that's something that our peace builders were asking themselves. That's something that I kept asking myself. From what I noticed is that people who have forgiven, a lot of the forgiveness has come from their own inner power. And I think a lot of that inner power has to do with the individual's faith, right? Maria has forgiven Filbert. A big part of that has to do with her belief system, her value system, and what she believes in, her spiritual tradition, her spiritual faith. So I think at first I didn't believe it. You know, how can you forgive something like that? And through the conversations, I've learned that the people of Rwanda are a spiritual people, and they believe in that power, the power of forgiveness. And I think it just has to do with a person's inner strength and their own faith tradition. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's wonderful. John just commented that Jennifer, a 2017 and 18 peace builder who traveled to India with Henry, is on the call. So I'd like to ask Jennifer, I'm going to get her on here and see if she would be willing to share with us. Jennifer, are you on?
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna get you. Hello, Jennifer, it's so nice to meet you.
Nice to
We're
meet you.
spotlight you for a moment. We're putting you on the spot.
It's okay.
Would you be able to share with us how the peace exchange impacted your own life?
Yeah, of course. So for who doesn't know me, I'm Jennifer Resendiz. I was part of the 2017-2018 Peace Exchange class, the one who went to India. And that was during the time I was in high school, actually. I was a senior. And going to India really opened up a lot of doors for me. And being part of Peace Exchange, I've learned so many lessons. I've seen things I would have never seen here being in Chicago. And a lot of those things inspired me for the year after when I went to college. So now I'm a sophomore at U of I, University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. I'm actually here in Champaign. And now a lot of like my concentration and what I'm doing relates a lot to what I've learned through the Peace Exchange. My major actually, it's global studies. And because of the Peace Exchange exposing me to like a whole other country, I really want to continue working with other cultures. And I am on the pre-law track. And I've been doing a lot of things related to law and politics. And I even started my own organization on campus. It's a national organization, and I started a chapter here on campus, and it's called Ignite. And it's about empowering women to be involved in politics. So I've learned a lot of lessons, and I'm really grateful for the Peace Exchange.
Jennifer, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for being put on the spotlight, if you will.
Oh, no, it's okay.
And telling us your story. You're a true upstander, and thank you for sharing that. We appreciate it so much.
Yeah, I really believe in the Peace Exchange, and I'm always talking about this program, and like always whenever I meet people who are professionals, I tell them like you should watch this video that I was in, and like these other documentaries that they have, because it really does inspire other people and teach you lessons that I would have not have experienced if I wasn't part of it.
Amazing. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for joining us today.
Of course.
Great. Our next question, we'd like to hear a little bit more about your trauma-informed training program and how that works.
Sure. In the first phase of the program, when peace builders like Jennifer, before we travel, one of our trainings is on being trauma-informed. One of our partners, UCAN, trains our young people in understanding that trauma is different for different people. People have experiences when something awful happens, like different acts of violence. People have their own ways of coping with it. So the trainings that we provide our peace builders is so they're informed, that they understand that trauma is universal, right? That you can be in the inner city, you can be urban, you could be suburban, you can be rural. People experience trauma, right? So that's something that we really take pride in. So again, one of our partners, UCAN, provides those trainings for us. They're a great organization on Chicago's West Side.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Henry, so I think this answers the question. Someone asked, why did you pick Rwanda? And how did it compare to the other countries where peace builders have been?
Sure. We're very intentional of selecting the countries we visit.
Okay.
We want to build with activists and educators on the ground who have used the methods of nonviolence to overcome systematic issues of violence. When we were in South Africa, when the Peace Exchange and the Peace Builders traveled to South Africa, they were learning about the apartheid structure and the anti-apartheid movement. People waged peace and nonviolence to overcome the oppression in that society. When we traveled to India, we learned about Mahatma Gandhi's tradition of nonviolence, their history with colonialism. How did India, India, South Africa, all of these countries that we have visited have brought great teachings to our world about how to advance social justice through a nonviolent approach. You know, when we were in Thailand, we visited Thai Plum Village, which is a nonviolent community led by teachers like Thich Nhat Hanh. So we're very intentional. We want to go to places where nonviolence has succeeded because we're going there as students. We want to learn what has worked so that you can teach us. You know, the people of the world have a lot to teach us here about lessons in struggle and in peace. And so that's how we select these countries. In Rwanda, when we were there, again, was for the 25th anniversary, a commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsi. And that's why we traveled there. The country has moved, has come a long way. There's still more work to do, but that's our interest. That's why we travel to these societies.
Thank you, thank you. And an interesting question here. Do you consider poverty to be a kind of violence?
Of course, of course. Gandhi said it. Martin Luther King said it. Yeah, poverty is a form of violence. And so how do we help people get out of those vicious forms of violence? Violence has many forms. It has many ways to keep people down. Poverty is one way to do that. So yes, poverty is violence. It's one of the worst forms. It's one of the worst forms of violence.
Henry, we only have time for one more question. And I thank you to everyone who's been putting in questions. If we didn't get to yours, we will at another time. I'm going to close with this question because I think it is important that came up. How can everyday people prevent future genocides from taking place?
We have to come to grips with history. People have to understand that genocide doesn't just happen. If you look at what happened in Rwanda, it was small actions that people did over time that led to mass killings, right? I don't like that group of people over there. I don't like them, right? It's the idea. It's the idea that your world, that my world is better off without you. That is very dangerous thinking. That is divisive thinking. So how can we prevent further genocides from happening? We have to start educating our young people so that they don't perpetuate violence as they get older. One thing I want to say in closing, when we were in Rwanda in the Kigali Genocide Memorial, in the museum, by the resting places of the victims, they built a peace school. They have they have a peace school in this memorial, and what they do is they educate young people in the country of ways to promote peace. You know, if you want to prevent genocide from happening, you have to educate young people of how genocide starts. And that's something that all of us can learn. They have peace education in Rwanda. Well, we need peace education here in the United States. We need peace education beginning at 5th, 4th, 6th grade levels. And that's also something that we've been inspired to do, and it is something that we're doing. We have to teach young people ways to make peace.
Amen. Thank you so much, Henry. This has been really wonderful. I appreciate your time, and we appreciate everyone who joined us for this meaningful program. When we are open again, we invite you to visit our museum and our many exhibits. As I mentioned before, Henry Cervantes is one of the 3 human rights champions featured in our Take a Stand Center, so a true hero with us today.